Workshop committee at the order. It is 5:35. Right now, all commissioners are present, but Commissioner Burton. And we also have Charles Rudd, our city manager, and Bobby Pickens, our city attorney, present. You want to go ahead and start us off? Let's get this started. Here's Commissioner Burton. There she is. And Commissioner Burton is also present.
Father, once again, we thank you for your loving kindness and your mercy, God. We thank you for being with us this far and taking care of us and caring us. And God, we continue to ask you to continue to bless us going in and bless us coming out, bless our community, and our citizens in our community, and the commissioners. We ask this in your son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Charles, I'm gonna let you go ahead and get us started and make introductions. We had a workshop last week and it really worked out well. It was more of a roundtable workshop. But I think today, because of us having to use the
More of a
screen,
presentation.
this is more of a presentation. So this will work, but we can definitely incorporate that in the future.
It's almost more of a classroom. We're gonna have comprehensive planning 101. This
Okay.
is a requested presentation on kind of why we have a comp plan, the history of it, and what future land use map means and how it can be changed and so forth. So Ida Meehan is here from Zeb Cohen Associates, they're our contractor planning firm, and she has a little presentation for you, and then she'll take your questions.
Okay, it's Ida?
Yep.
Okay, Ida, come on up.
Thank you for having me. I know you all are doing a lot of exciting things here.
There's a microphone at this thing.
I don't think they're on, Charles.
That one's not on?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we're on.
don't think the PA's on.
Just now. So there's a microphone there for you. And use the
Okay,
clicker to-
so-
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can move it from you. Good.
Testing.
Let me just test it.
You're in the corner, right-hand side. There you go.
Okay,
We're set to go. My name is Ida Meehan. I'm a senior planner with Zach Cohen. And as you know, we do some of your daily planning activities, your applications and so forth. And so I'm familiar with the Crescent City and it's a pleasure to be here. So why growth management in Florida? And at one time, it was a real term of art. That's what we heard was growth management. There was a time back in the 70s when it was really a new term. And it was in the 70s that Florida first experienced that kind of undue population growth stress, infrastructure stress, and water quantity stress. It's caused by massive population growth and the negative impacts on water quality, kind of created a crisis feeling. And there was a professor, John DeGrove, he was one of the pioneers in that movement. So it was really these three forces working together: population, water shortages, and projected infrastructure costs that kind of created the need for something to be done. The first Comprehensive Planning Act was in 1972. Again, it was caused by the drought and the Everglades fire of the early 70s. That's when, I'm sure you all heard of developments of regional impact. They were introduced. Those are projects that cross or impact more than one county. And areas of critical state concern, which, for example, the Florida Keys are still an area of critical state concern today. It was the beginning of something really far-sighted. The initial desire to begin state land acquisition programs that have been very successful. And like one, for example, is the Florida Forever program. And you can see signs and recognition of that program all over Florida. Governor Ruben Askew was the initial leader. He created the Environmental Lands Management Study Committee. which again was like the first land use committee, but it was water and land use, right? And it was a broad group of stakeholders. And actually, it began what we know today as the 5 water management districts too during that period. So in 1975, they went back and tried to build on some of the work. And that's when the first attempt was made to get to the local government level. And it did require local governments to adopt a blueprint for growth. It had noble language in it that, said that development had to comply with the plan and required consistency with state plans. But the implementation was spotty, right? It was the first effort and wasn't complete or really achieve the results they were seeking. What we are operating today was largely created in 1985, and that's referred to as the Florida Growth Management Act. And I think I can say that basically they learned from everything they did previously. And the Florida Growth Management Act required every Florida county and municipality to create a comprehensive plan. It had barometers, like it had a needs analysis. The plan had to be submitted to the state for review. Plans had to be financially feasible, so you couldn't just capture all the growth without paying for it. Effort had state funding, which was one of the drawbacks of earlier efforts, because some local governments couldn't afford this. And it had teeth. It was legally binding. It had, it was very complete and thorough. And all but only 3 did not submit plans by 1992, so it achieved its goal. But really, what is comprehensive planning in a simple sense, right? It's a vision, it's a roadmap. It's typically 5, 10, 20 years out based on a population projection. And in Florida, it's a physical plan, a policy plan, a guiding document with an implementation strategy. There was an initial group, and they still exist today, called 1,000 Friends of Florida, public interest group. And this is a quote from them. They call the local government comprehensive plan a city's constitution for guiding growth. And they were also part of the process. So mapping the comprehensive plan, it's a big part of the Florida process. Mapping a comprehensive plan says, where does a community want to go? What does it want to look like in the future? Where will growth be and how can it be guided and provided for? It does include the map. It includes infrastructure or the planning for infrastructure. And, it talks about the distribution, location, extent of various categories of land that a community includes in its plan. And it establishes a range of allowable uses and densities and intensities on specific parcels in the map. But for the most part, it's also generalized, right? It's a guiding document. So this is the future land use map for Putnam County. And you can see that it has different land uses. Of course, it's more rural, conservation, agriculture, mining, and rural uses. And that, like for cities, right, you have your own comprehensive plan. So they include what you have. So this is your future land use map, as you saw from the website. And, from a planning perspective, I can just comment on like different needs, right? So you have downtown and your CRA properties, they're commercially oriented. And then you have your historic single-family core properties, which I think is an incredible asset. You have your lakefront areas, you have Central Avenue, you have, Summit and US 17, you have additional residential areas, public uses, and transitional areas. And really, all communities have these type of nuances and distinctions. This is the land use and zoning category. It basically shows that as part of the comprehensive planning process in Florida, future land use categories have designated zoning categories that apply to them. And like, for example, in commercial, you will see neighborhood commercial, highway commercial, that sort of thing. So it's a correlation that should be consistent with the zoning district. Comprehensive plans also have various elements to them. Some are required, some are optional now. The future land use, traffic circulation, and a big part of that is the level of service or the quality of road capacity and flow. Housing, of course, affordable housing, big issue, public facilities, capital improvements element with infrastructure needs for 5 years out, public schools, facility element, conservation, intergovernmental, recreation, and then sewer, your utilities, sewer, solid waste, drainage, and water. So I know you're just doing a update to your comprehensive plan, but this is a little refresher on the comprehensive plan itself. Basically, it includes goals, objectives, and policies toward certain ends or desirable outcomes. So, for example, the goal here is to revitalize downtown. So you might come up with a consensus approach about maintaining and expanding downtown housing stock, improving and maintaining downtown infrastructure, holding special events and that sort of thing. And then under those objectives, those steps are various policies and strategies to achieve that aim. And again, you're just doing an update, and I know this is within your plan and all the plans. So there's the comprehensive plan, the elements. You have the future land use, you have the various different elements, and you have your goals, objectives, and policies. And to me, they're like spokes in a wheel because all the different elements should sort of feed into each other. They should all be consistent. They shouldn't like work against each other. And that's how we move forward, right? You wouldn't want one of your elements to be contrary and contradictory to your other elements because you want the plan to be successful as a whole. It's very integrated. It's very holistic. And, you know, as I'm sure your consultant for the plan, the Regional Planning Council emphasized, you know, they're living documents. They have legal standing. They get updated based on demographic and population changes, emerging trends and issues. New legal requirements is a very big one. Becomes your playbook. And, you know, it becomes part of your community discussion. So when you do and participate in your process, which is required, like you are doing once every 7 years, it's considered a large-scale amendment. And the first step of that process is a public hearing at Planning and Zoning Commission. The recommendation to the City Commission. The second step is first reading and transmittal at the City Commission. This is not the final decision. Very unique to this whole process is the double City Commission review of plans. It takes 2 city commissions to adopt the future land use map and comprehensive plan. The first hearing is a vote to transmit the documents to the state and the state agencies for comments and to and these would qualify as those. It includes data and analysis, which of course is your population, your new population update. And
Just to clarify, so over 50 acres for changing would be a large scale amendment. For a single parcel, someone just switching it from commercial to residential, that's a small scale amendment, but it does follow the same. We don't have to transmit it to the state for comments, we can do that locally. We do
if
that
it's
first and
under
second
50
reading.
acres.
Yeah.
All proposed amendments must be reviewed by state and regional agencies following public hearings by the Planning and Zoning Commission. A minimum of 30 days is required for the state agencies to provide their comments. Upon receipt of the comment letter from the state land planning agency or the state agency in charge of this, the city commission has 180 days to adopt the changes or decline to adopt the amendment. If the city commission doesn't act on it, the amendment is considered withdrawn. The adopted amendment is then submitted to the state and regional planning agencies for final comment and cannot take effect until 31 days after adoption by the city commission. The state agency, which is the Department of Economic Opportunity or an affected party, does have the right to request a hearing at the state level to adopt, to challenge the adoption. There are certain standing provisions to do that. The comprehensive plan is a legislative type process. It can be based on legitimate public concerns and can be more discretionary. However, given this whole body of work and history with comprehensive planning, there are legal constraints in effect upon local governments these days. And one is takings, that the Constitution limits the local government's ability to restrict the use of land beyond the point that the property owner cannot make reasonable use of his or her property. The second sort of guardrail or consideration is referred to as the Burt-Harris Act. I'm not a lawyer, and but I know that in planning, this is a concern, and this is something that is brought up, that in 1995, the Florida legislature created another constraint unique to Florida that limits local government's ability to interfere with an existing use or a vested right. And in this recent legislature, it was strengthened to make it easier to sue under this act. So basically, it just emphasizes the need for caution when restricting a person's existing land use rights. And the third isn't on that screen, but as you know, you have to do a property rights element, and that's sort of along that line of, just the need to be cautious and mindful of the legal constraints that have arisen recently. So this is our framework, right? Local government, comprehensive plan elements, land development regulations, and then the development order, the hierarchy of decision making. And then, of course, it allows you to move forward as a community and make decisions based on this framework. So that's pretty much my presentation.
I want to mention the other part of the Burt-Harris deals with, when you have a zoning and a future land use, you have certain rights. And so if we want to change your zoning or future land use and it would remove some of those rights, Burt-Harris protects the property owner from that. They have to be compensated for it. This happened when I was in Maitland. We were looking at reducing 5 stories to 3 stories in the central business district. And it was a Burt-Harris problem because the property at the time had the right to 5 stories. And if we reduce it to 3 stories, we've taken away some of their rights, some of their value.
Value, it's more value, yeah.
The value, so we'd have to compensate them for that value. So we didn't, so they do it.
So Burt-Harris was a House representative. And he was also agriculture. And so he was big property rights, and that's why it's called the Bert Harris. Everybody says, why is it called Bert Harris? Because he sponsored it and he was all about property rights. But you have a mechanism you have to go through. With that, you have a certain amount of days that you have to bring it to their attention, that this is gonna have an impact. It has to have a direct impact on your property. You have to have an appraisal, evaluation appraisal. So there's processes you have to go through it. You know, it's not just, you can make a claim, there is more to it, but Bert Harris, it was a big deal back at the time. I happened to be in Tallahassee when they were going through all of this. And,
So it affects us if we were to look at an entire neighborhood example that came up when we were going through our first reading. If you wanted to change an entire neighborhood and essentially reduce the density on the future land use, that would have a Bert Harris impact on those properties and their rights.
May I have a question?
sure,
So, but essentially, I know that there were some homeowners who were concerned about the density of their area. It would be under potentially, I don't know, it could be under 50 acres. If it's under 50 acres, that would be a change we could make locally, correct?
Well, each parcel would be certainly less than 50 acres.
Right, well, I'm saying if potentially it was small, but to do this at the time when it was brought up, I think I remember you saying that essentially we would have to get the agreement of the property owners to make that change.
And Bobby, you can speak to this. I think we have to give them the option to opt out if they want to hang on to that. They want to keep their future land use.
Got it. So in other words, there's a process, but you're saying if there are more than 50 contiguous acres that we're changing, or is it 50 total?
It's over 50.
And
There's
as
a large scale amendment with the
Then it would go to the state.
transmittal and the adoption hearing in 180 days. It's the more elaborate.
right, but is that 50 contiguous acres or 50 total?
It should be contiguous.
Okay, that means, you know,
I
all-
mean, for the most part, it should all relate to each other. If a couple of parcels are across the road, you know, but it should relate to each other. It shouldn't be scattershot. It should be an area that relates to each other.
okay, so you're saying like in a neighborhood?
Yeah,
or a
I-
named neighborhood, or say if there's a strip of land in the middle, but it was all in the same neighborhood, or some of it was across the street. Whatever, some was on the east and some was on the west, it would still be considered relating to each other.
It should relate to each other, you know.
Okay. And then one more question, Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay, so to amend your future land use map, I heard you say for 50 more acres, you have to have the whole process that would state review. What about amending an element of your comp plan? Just, you know, one of the text of an element.
Like just want to modify the historic preservation element of the comp plan.
You know, small scales are defined by acreage, so I'm thinking that would still be a large scale because it has,
Apply to the whole city.
yeah, data analysis and that kind of thing. They make small scale easier because they're more like zoning case, little zoning cases. But, I mean, text amendments can be substantive and very, you know, so,
Well, I just have no idea.
yeah, no, I know, you know, we would ask for clarification, before we made a final, recommendation on that, but I mean, certainly the idea is that small scale amendments are like little zoning cases, and it became kind of, you know, hard to argue that why should it be held up for 6 months? You know what I mean? Because they're just small.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Y'all have any questions? Any questions? Commissioner Burton? What about, you want to, the public, I think we have some residents here that might want to ask some questions, so. See, thank you very much
Oh,
for
it's
your
okay. It's
presentation.
okay. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. So do we have anybody in the audience that wants to ask any questions or has any, and there needs some clarification as far as what the comp plan does and what we're currently going through? Does this answer everything that you had some concerns about?
Sites, 304 Chestnut Street. I understand, we have a commitment to review our comp plan every 7 years. Was there some other specific change or changes that this commission or the city manager is trying to get through on this comp plan, or just
This is our 7-year, this is
just our
actually.
7-year review?
Yeah, this was, we
Actually,
didn't
we're-
initiate it and have anything in mind
Yeah.
for it. There were a couple, the state required property rights element, which was new. And so we applied with just complied with new state law and got our, kind of checked the box, we're updated for another 7 years.
What's going on with the property south of town?
What property?
The RV park?
Yeah, the park, yeah.
Oh, the RV park.
They submitted the final site plan, it's been reviewed and we've issued comments to them to address, and we're gonna meet with them to go through those comments, and then they'll have to resubmit if they're addressing our comments.
Okay, so things are still moving forward.
It's
Oh,
still, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we hope it'll come to planning and zoning in July or August.
Nobody else? Come on up.
I have a question. I just got more, most people know.
I'm so sorry. If you'll just give, you have to state your address.
Okay, 100 Lakeshore Drive, Crescent City.
Thank you.
Last time I was up here, was required, or given one has. In regard to the comp plan on my agricultural property, which is about half of it's in the city, 30+ acres. I've noticed in the guidelines, there is some exemption for agriculture, tourism, and military installations as far as in the comp plan. But the federal government recognizes it still as a farm. USDA does. Every state agency and government except for Crescent City still recognizes it as a farm. And although it's on the comp plan is being for future use, not agriculture. So I'd like to be able to talk somewhere about the exception to that.
Well, where is
Because that
that?
will encumber, that will really encumber. It's
Right, on Pine Street.
it's between Reed Street and most of it's between Reed Street and Junction.
So that's the area that you're talking about, that
Yes.
30+ acres
Yes.
right there?
Everyone else in the world recognizes agriculture. And the state legislature, after oranges succumbed to the green, did give us some time to transition, and the property is still agriculture. Every taxing authority in the state recognizes agriculture, water management, and so I would like to, that should be in green. And also the parcel across the street. Fine, just east of fine.
Yeah, it's currently zoned ag. You're currently agricultural zone,
Yeah,
and the future land use is
Commercial.
RM. I think it should be orange.
Yeah, it's hard to,
It's hard to tell.
yeah, it's hard
and
to.
I'm sure that's just a suggestion, but that will encumber a future sale because the value of the property is a 12-inch well and $1 million irrigation system is still intact. a potential buyer will buy it for that more than anything else. And I would like to think that it was like the 15 acres at the end of South Prospect Street. My memory serves me correctly, in early 2000, when Dr. Collette luckily sold that 15 acres for $250,000. They came to the city, it was in the county, they came to the city, and said, we would like to have access to water and sewer, please accept us into the city limits. And they did that, but we know the economy went down in early 2000, and it still kept in agriculture, but it was in the city instead of the county. And to me, that's a reasonable process for someone that has agriculture, like myself, call it property right, which is guaranteed in the Constitution. So I would request whoever I need to talk to for that piece of property, the 2 parcels on either side of Pine Street. One of them goes to Norwood Lane, the other one's halfway to 17, going east.
So it's currently zoned agriculture,
Yes,
and someone might not buy it to continue it as agriculture because of the future land use of residential.
that's right.
Ida, do you think
It would cover my sale.
keep using it as agriculture, it would not be impeded by a future land use, it would not be inconsistent?
Right, but
So somebody.
Well, I didn't know
buy
what
it.
kind of legal constraints that would have, because the gentleman that's looking to buy it wants to probably grow peaches.
Well, he could do that.
He could do that.
But if you want to make it a industrial site, that would be inconsistent with current and
We
future.
would have to
land
come
use.
before you.
Yeah,
Just like anything.
but to keep using ag.
Well, I just want to be assured that it's not going to encumber my sale to my detriment. Because he may want to keep it in agriculture until he develops it.
Correct. If he wanted to change it from ag to something else, then he would
That's his
encounter.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, this is very clarifying for me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Is that your, Mr. Miller, is that your only concern? Is that the only concern that you have? I mean, now's the time. That's what we're holding this
That's the only
workshop
one
for.
I have, that property. I just wanted to cover my future sale of that property.
Okay, no, that shouldn't. Ida, you agree? You agree with that, correct, Ida?
yes.
You agree with that? Okay.
I think his land is actually zoned single family residential right now. Yeah. I don't think your land is zoned agricultural currently. Yeah, it's currently, single family
For
SR1.
over 100 years.
We'll have to look into that some more and see when that.
Excuse me, I agree with Skip. Why is it that way? Because it's been agriculture
For years,
as long as I've been
as long
alive.
as I've been around too.
Do you recall doing anything? I mean, because it would have changed that at any
I
time.
don't, you
I
know,
can't think of we did anything.
We'll
something,
have to look back and find out.
something is amiss there.
You're getting your ag tax exemptions, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
We'll look at the county, we'll see what the county has it.
yeah, see
What's that?
see what the county has it as, okay.
Really?
Okay, we have any other questions? Steve, Lisa? You good? This is your chance. Come on up.
Okay, well, I'll ask another question.
Yeah, let him. Go ahead, Steve.
Lisa, through the board chestnut. So if I'm reading this right, it's a tiny map. It's hard to see. The 2 blocks between orange and lemon are yellow. So that's single family residential. But everything else around our 2 blocks is multi-family residential. That's a question.
We're looking at zoning map or future land use?
Whatever matters in there.
I think you possibly are looking at the future land use map and not the current.
That was in the packet.
That was in the packet, okay. Because that's what we've got before us right now is the Hold it up. You have it with you?
And
Okay.
It's the one that's in the
Can't see it.
package.
It's all right.
the one you can't read,
Multifamily.
Yeah,
It's kind of tiny.
yeah.
but I'm assuming that's,
Yeah.
and residential, I'm assuming that the yellow between those two lots, I'm assuming that's lemon and orange.
Yes, most of that neighborhood is, future land use is multifamily residential. That's the right terminology.
What is
That was the
on,
concern on first reading was folks discovered that the whole neighborhood had a higher future land use density than what's currently zoned. But it's been that way probably since 1985 when we first adopted the plan, just no one was aware.
And if we don't want it that way, what do we do?
Well, that's what we're talking about. If we were to try to do the whole neighborhood, we'd have to notify every resident, every owner, that have an option to opt out of the change to keep that future, because it's more value, there's more value
In
in
multifamily.
multifamily than single family. So the property value is more valuable with a more dense future land use. So you have the ability to say, no, I want to leave my property alone. And then we'd see what was left. We might end up with a checkerboard which would defeat the purpose of trying to reduce the future land use. Because then if all your neighbors around you kept theirs, they could still build, if someone in the future could build a higher density. So it's a process. We can't just say, from now on, all these blocks, we're going to down zone you to single family in the future land use. We have to ask everybody, and everybody has to respond. We have to get a certified response that I'm in or I'm out, and then put it together. It's a,
So when you look at the current zoning map, okay, when you look at that current zoning map, from Pine Street all the way past Spruce Street, all the way down to Breezy Point, it is currently zoned single-family residential, low density. Okay. But when you look at when they were doing this map, they're looking at what can happen in the future. This is what it's currently zoned, but what could it possibly be in the future? And so the people, the beings that did this said, well, possibly at some point in time, that could be multifamily. We could see that as the city changes. I mean, a lot's happened in the city,
or just more units per acre.
or more
Yeah.
units per
Smaller
acre,
lots.
smaller lots, they were looking at it. But
Garage
as you
apartments.
currently sit on this, which is your Crescent City zoning map, correct me if I'm wrong, it says that they are, it looks as this from the color, they are SR 1A. So that means that as you currently sit, you are single-family residential, low density. And it makes sense because that's 4 dwellings per acre. And most of those are, what are they, just about quarter-acre lots over there? How big are those lots? Okay, so they're quarter-acre lots. So that would be it. And then we're saying that based on what our future land use map is, the most that could go, as it's currently projected, would be, like we said, that multifamily or more units per
10 units
acre.
an acre.
Yeah, 10 units per acre.
Okay, well, Mayor, I have a question about that.
Okay.
So, and I think this came up before. So here you have this primarily single-family neighborhood with some historic houses in it. But there are some that are not so historic and there are some that are in disrepair. So if someone came in and bought up lots and wanted to clear them and build multifamily, the neighbors around, whether they like it or not, the owner is entitled to the maximum density. Is that correct?
Well, they would apply for a zoning to rezone the property to, for a higher density. And since the future land use would be consistent with the future land use, it wouldn't be an automatic no. But I believe it would be a judicial hearing, it would come before the commission, and you would get to decide if it's consistent, you feel it's consistent with the neighborhood. You said, no, there's no other multifamily in that neighborhood. We don't feel this is consistent. You could vote it down.
Right, but I'm looking at this neighborhood, which I live very close to it, and I think Commissioner West was in it. Certainly if I lived there, I mean, supposedly multifamily is more valuable, but if you have a home on the waterfront with a nice view, and there's low traffic and low density, and that's the nature of your neighborhood, is my understanding that multifamily can have a negative effect on single-family properties around it. Is that correct? I mean, it's
Probably
really
depends on
valid.
the type of construction.
I mean, you would have new construction, it would comply with your land development code.
But I'm saying from the perspective of a property owner, people that have like little, historic
Yeah.
homes or mini estates, it's usually considered, isn't it? To not be, it's considered to be a downgrade to the single
As a
family property.
planner, we recommend a mix of uses. It's more resilient for a community to have that variety. I mean, you have to look at it case by case. You would see it and be able to make that judgment and hear that testimony. It would be a case by case thing, because I don't think you can say for all cases that is.
No, I'm not saying for all cases, but
Yeah.
would it's possible the existing property owners would not feel that way.
I mean,
Right
this
for that.
certainly could make that argument.
Right, so basically, as I understand it, the people who live in the neighborhoods that are designated for multifamily in the future land use map, they potentially would have to come to a hearing if someone wanted to rezone a property that was next to them, correct?
They could be part of the hearing, yes. The other thing to consider, even if someone were to go in there and buy 4 houses, let's say, and so I want to put in more dense, I can get 10 units an acre in my future land use. It still has to comply to our setbacks, front yard, backyard, side yard, it still have to fit in there. Even if you approved an increase in density, let's say they want to do a row of townhomes and you're excited about the design, they're going to be $400,000 townhomes, you think it would be great. It would still have to fit, just because you get 10 units per acre. And you manage to put together an acre, but there are setbacks and, if it's on a corner, it's still got to fit on the lot based on our code. So it's not a simple thing like, oh, they're gonna put 10 units every acre in there. I think it's more likely if they were to buy for instance, Mr. Miller's property and clear it, I want to put it in a subdivision, but I want more than 4 units an acre, I want 6 an acre. My future land use says I can have up to 10, so I'm gonna apply for a zoning change. I'm allowed 10, I want to put 6 in there because I want a smaller lot and I can sell them for more, make more money. So that's more likely scenario for that, for vacant land than to go in and try to buy existing houses and demolish them to put in new construction.
Now, let me say this too, is we've got, so right there on Lemon Street, there is a multifamily. There's an apartment building there and they have what, 4 units in that? So there's 4 units. And now it's not zoned. There's not in our current land, so somehow or another, I don't know what happened.
Is that old historic house?
The old-
May have been
Yeah.
It might have been grandfathered in, but it's still sitting there in that. So I mean, I wonder when that, I know it's an old historic, it's interesting though, they didn't cut that out either, when they were doing the zoning.
Yeah.
They didn't cut it out and make it multifamily. Steve, you have a question, come on up.
Steve Dempsey, 335. Real estate agents being real estate agents, when this thing passes, everybody in our neighborhood has a double lot. There are many. Like in our area, there's probably 1 acre with 4 houses. We've already gotten things in the mail from real estate agents trying to get us to sell. Could they in fact say, have some sort of a thing going where they would say, we'll buy your lot or you can sell your lot, to increase, now that there's a change here. And I assume this is gonna pass.
Well, we
not a
don't,
change.
there's not a
No
change,
change.
there's no change.
Status quo, it's how it's been
This-
since
this-
1985.
This is how it's been. you're currently zoned single-family residential, 4 units per acre. We're looking at 20 years from now, 10 years from now,
And that,
60
that
years
future
from now.
year, that's been the same since, probably since 1985,
Yeah,
had that future land use.
that it could be multifamily, but as you
This has been the
currently,
same since 85.
Likely, I don't know when,
But
that
it
was
was
the first,
dated 2019.
well, every 7 years it gets looked
It
at.
gets, it gets looked at, but it doesn't mean it
They don't
changes.
change it, yeah.
Well, Mayor, could I clarify something that you just said that I'm not sure is correct? You said that this is looking at 5 or 10 years in the future. But it's my understanding that anyone who buys one of these properties, they can apply to be rezoned up to the level that it's designated.
they can, but that's not what I
Wait,
meant.
I'm-
You
but
know,
I'm asking
Lisa,
Charles.
yeah, that's
I
not
mean-
what I meant.
But we're telling Steve what the situation is now. So technically, someone who buys in that neighborhood, they can apply for a change in zoning, and as long as they meet all the other requirements, it goes up to that density level, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because we're not saying this is only in the far future. If someone wants to apply for it, the future is now, according to the future land use map.
Yeah, say that's the direction we're okay
So they're going.
with going. They would say, I want to change to commercial. We said that's inconsistent with your future land use. So that's an automatic.
And I apologize, Steve, I didn't mean it. What I meant is when you're looking at the future land, it could, and she's right, it could be today, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. It's the future. And that's what they were looking at. This is what we're seeing in the future when they were designing this. My house is the exact same way. My whole neighborhood sits the exact same, that's exact same position. You know, right now I'm single family residential, 4 units per acre. But over here in the future, they could take that entire South Prospect and change it into multifamily.
And all of North Prospect where I am.
Yeah.
Is all commercial in the future. So I guess I could, I don't know, some kind of big old Target or something up there, I don't know.
So, I mean, but I want us to be able to, you know, try to help you with your concerns and take some of those concerns away. So what's your concern?
There are just things that I see, like the RV park, you know, that's, you know, orange.
Okay,
You know,
back in the future, in our current, that is multifamily residential.
But they apply.
It's PUD.
And they applied for, but they applied for a PUD, exact, well, yeah, but I'm looking at what it's showing here. But they applied for a PUD on that one. But it was never zoned to begin with. I don't think it was ever zoned, single family residential for units.
No, and from what I hear, there was some talk at one time, for that particular area. And I don't know how true it is, but I think at one time they were talking about putting actually condominiums up in that area. Quite a few of them.
They were,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, you know, it's kind of like, what do we want, what do we want for our future here in Crescent City? And it's kind of a tough decision, but I think, we want the ecotourism, we want, you know, kind of down to earth, you know, we want barbecues, we want, people that boat on the lake, we don't necessarily want big, I don't think anyway, I don't necessarily want big condominiums, on our lakes, so these are all decisions that come to us, and of course, every time those decisions come, we ask all of you to come in and express what you want, and we try to do what the city wants, you know, that's our job.
I believe back in '05, a lot of that along, especially down there by,
Across from Winn-Dixie.
across from Winn-Dixie, because I've seen the plan for that. That was all to be condos.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, Commissioner DeVito?
I kind of have a problem with, and Bobby, I need your input on this, with commissioners answering technical questions, because, for example, Commissioner Burton just said, when we have something relating to land use, the people come before us and we try to do what you want. But it is my understanding in many land use hearings that we are not allowed to do what the people want because we are restricted by the statutes. Is that not somewhat accurate? That we cannot be completely responsive to public opinion?
It'd be a quasi judicial hearing, right? So in a quasi judicial hearing, the public would have to bring competent and substantial evidence from an expert. They'd have to hire a planner as an example to come up and testify. And then your hands would be tied, if they can't do that and the applicant has met the requirements. And I had a situation in Maitland where we approved 100% residential development in the central business district because the opposition didn't hire anybody to represent them as competent and substantial evidence. So can you describe what constitutes a quasi judicial hearing versus?
It's what you say, evidence, you have to, it has to.
I mean, what type of hearing is that?
Quasi judicial.
No, I mean, what kind of issue goes to a quasi judicial versus
Traffic,
legislative?
noise, impacts, diminishment of value. I mean, all those are the kind of things people testify to all the time.
What type of application would go to a quasi judicial hearing
A
versus
zoning
legislative?
application.
As a rezoning?
Yeah. Whereas future land use is more legislative.
So yeah, someone wanted to rezone, then it's quasi judicial and you
You have less
have to go with
discretion.
the.
You got less discretion on rezone.
But that was my understanding, what we were told during the PUD hearing. So, and this is why, to me, I'm more comfortable with our professional staff answering questions that have a technical aspect. Because as commissioners, I don't think we have the capability to give an accurate answer. Bobby, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree.
That's fine, this is a workshop, I mean, geez.
Okay, Mr. King?
We're can't just
Scott
say.
King, 721 Lemon Avenue. Okay, so if this comp plan really has teeth, I know we have no choice. This is just looks like another way for the bigger government to control what the little government can and cannot do. That's another day. So, so if this thing has teeth, then all of this multifamily, let's be clear. If we have a condo or a duplex or any multifamily building, it is not going to increase anybody's property value. This is Crescent City, Florida. This isn't Manhattan or West Palm. Okay, you're not going to get townhouses with people making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year living in there. Where are they going to work? This is Crescent City. We are, is it the lowest or next to the lowest impoverished county in the state? So what we're saying here is that in the future, we can have just that, and that's called Hubbard Park, by the way. That's Hubbard, Mathis, I'm sorry, Mathis Hill.
I was gonna say,
I'm sorry, Mathis Hill.
Okay.
I live in Mathis Hill. So there's a couple other folks here, and I do not want, and Mathis Hill has a lot of unimproved property, which means that they don't have to spend a lot to get a couple of big lots and build a condo. Condo is just a fancy word for apartment building, right? Where you own the individual unit and rent it out rather than the whole building. So I think it's changed. That's not what we want Mathis Hill to be in the future. Does anybody want that? I don't think so, and that's what we're saying. A couple more houses per acre, no, that's not the issue. So I think we ought to call a spade. Future is multi, that's not what we want. That could be, where do you put multi in this area if we need to? We've got, the government's built, what, 4 housing units in the town, 1 just outside of town, in the city limits. Normally, that kind of thing is on, well, I hate to say it, because we have some folks living on Prospect, but I mean, being adjacent to your downtown or adjacent to your main drag, you don't put it in the prettiest part of town, or the second prettiest part of town. So if that was really since 85, then it's time to change that one. I don't think that's what we want there. And geez, if all this orange is that, all those huge lots on Prospect that go down to the lake, those on multi. We don't want those long driveways lined with. Down past Lake Road, called the Big Bend Summit, that doesn't make sense to be multi. I see where the government put in the housing developments, it was multi, and that kind of makes sense. But, if we're gonna do this, then let's do it right. Or, not or, if we're gonna do it, let's do it right. These nice areas, nice properties, hammocked neighborhoods on lakes, that's not where you put a duplex or. Hope it's not the monkey wrench. We're awfully late in this process, right? Is this time an issue, or can we do?
No, we do second reading and get up to, and get in compliance, and then we can proceed with a large scale amendment. It's gonna take a while.
Sure is, yeah. So, I kind of feel like, again, that's why I started so negative like I did. Here it is. I mean, really, did they have towns of 1,500 in mind, do you think, in the 80s?
Yes, they
Did they
did.
really? Well, that's
Every.
the
little-
same as not letting the food truck, letting the food truck park anywhere in town. That's just bad, that's just bad state government there. I understand Orlando, Jacksonville, yeah, they need.
Well, if you'll consider, back probably in the 80s when they were looking at how do we want to grow, where do we want to let the city grow? One of the initiatives was to avoid sprawl. So one of the initiatives was if we could grow inward, where would we be okay with the city getting more dense? So it looks like based on the yellow, they decided those areas, let's not have that get any more dense. In the areas that are up to 10 units an acre, they said, okay, if we're going to grow inward, we're going to, rather than spreading out and eating up all of our ag land or beautiful countryside, we'll let these areas get more dense. If it's going to happen somewhere, let's direct it towards these areas. And then we said a couple areas that are ag, we said we want that to become single family. I think somewhere in the north, there's a little bit of light industry or something, but so it's kind of looking at how will we grow? Do we only want to grow out? Do we want to declare the whole city will never change as it is? All new growth will be on green pasture. Or do we want to say, let's try to let some areas get thicker and safe to preserve some areas. And then in the future, these areas will become commercial, will allow this to, our corridor to expand a little bit, a little thicker around 17 and so forth. So that's kind of the thought process they went through, rather than the existing neighborhoods shall now and forever remain the same, and all new neighborhoods will be what is currently pasture or forest. So I think it was probably an effort to say, we'll allow some internal growth and development, and then of course annexations will have to come in and they'll decide that as they're annexed. I think that's what they looked at. So the commission will have to decide, we kind of feel like maybe that whole neighborhood should stay just like it is. But people will have an opportunity to opt out of that. So the kind of what's the thing about the cows are out of the barn or whatever. So we could pull some of it back, but we may end up with just this checkerboard that doesn't effectually keep the zoning down to single family SR1 in the future. You know what I mean? Now we've given those rights, or they've given the rights back before our time. So now we want to pull it back. It just won't be an easy, clean process.
Municipalities, counties, do counties do the same thing?
Yes.
Not to get off subject, but that couldn't stop the biosound issue. That's.
And go ahead, Commissioner Banks. Go ahead.
Charlie, let me ask you this. As this map stands now, Cause it gonna be the commissioner, if anybody come and wanna do something out of the ordinary, they got to come back before us for approval, right?
All zoning changes.
All those, they got to come back before. us
All
for-
future land
for
use
approval.
changes. Yes.
So why not let it stand still? I think we answered Mr. Miller's question, which was a wise question, a very good question. On his part, I don't blame him, but he wanna sell it and this city can't do nothing about that. It's good. So if somebody come in and wanted to make a major change, just like they're doing in St. Augustine, you know, they're doing major changes, and then it still had to come before the zoning, and they had to come before the commissioners for the final approval. And that would be the time before the man go spend X number of dollars that we would have to add. But other than that, I don't see nothing wrong. There might be some little problems in here, but I don't see nothing that great out the way.
And it's really not been a problem for the last 35, almost 40 years.
You're right.
Downtown partnership is gonna cause such growth, we're gonna have all kinds of issues with this.
You mean the glass is half full?
Yes, yes, the
I hope so,
glass
man.
is almost full.
Cause
I just want to clarify, Steve, your map is dated 2019. And I believe, and Ida, please share with me if this is correct. 2019, it looks like was the last time that we had any corrections to our future land use. So
That
that's
sounds
why,
about right.
so that would have been dated. That's why it's dated that. So if you had a question, why are we 2022? Because you did say yours was dated 2019, and I said, that's why. It's because, but we're still within our 7 years right now, so.
So this map has been in place since 85.
Well, there have been, individual properties been rezoned through that time, but essentially those large designations, unless something was annexed in
Yes.
after 1985, wouldn't have been on the map, obviously, back in 85.
Looks like they've had 7 corrections in 06, 07. They had 2 in 17, 18, and 2 in 2019, I believe.
Cause another key point, I can remember, and I know this was quite a time back, with a property right down from the hotel there. We had high expectations for that, and the one right next to the pine trees there.
That 17 acres right there that they were
Yeah.
gonna build those,
Yeah,
that's the condos, they were
yeah.
gonna build those condos
Yeah,
there.
for build a condo, so the economy kind of went up,
It tanked on
and
everybody.
that just changed everything at that point right there. So,
Mayor, I do have a question.
Sure.
And it relates to the future land use map and also to the ordinance that we're about to pass on second reading. The future land use map that is available on the back table and that we're given is much larger and legible, and it's dated 11/20/2019. The future land use map that's part of the ordinance that we're about to adopt says Crescent City 2035 future land use map. It is not legible. And it is dated 12/20/21. So my question is, are we changing which land use map we are going with?
On second read, if you approve second reading,
Uh-huh.
we'll use the one dated 2020.
We'll adopt that.
Well, where did that come from and what are the differences with
Made from that
2019?
one. It's from that one. That was the map, the 2019.
Okay,
And then they just corrected any errors, like I think we annexed in a piece of property in the for 308, it wasn't on the 2019 map, so it's now on the 2021 map. But there were no zoning changes or future land use changes that weren't done by this body.
okay, because clearly, once we adopt this is it. Who verifies that there are no errors in this one?
the Northeast Regional Planning Council verified for us. I think even the RV park wasn't on the 2019. It's now zoned.
Yeah,
PUD.
because they did that in 2021.
Yeah. So it'll show up on the new map, and
What color is PUD?
I'm not sure.
I don't see PUD on here. I don't even see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Well, they also have one.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, it's got the same number of, the legend is a little bit different. It has the same number of land use codes. And one thing that I asked for a while back, I think the mayor has a list of zoning changes or something, those little white sheets or grids.
Yeah.
I would like everybody to be able to have a copy of those. They seem to be important.
Well, they were in a package. I mean,
Where?
I
It's
thought,
one of
and I
the old
thought we
packets.
gave, I think an old packet maybe, but I thought we gave, yeah, you can have, we can make copies of all of that.
Right, because that was one of people's concerns was how have these changes come in through the years? And you explained at one point that there have been incremental, small changes to the zoning, and of course you have to change the future land use map. And also, I think it's very interesting that you say if we want to downzone, that you might have a checkerboard. But one thing that's pretty apparent about our whole future, our zoning and our future land use in particular, is it is a checkerboard. Because we're so small and narrow, and we have made these future land use changes. I mean, if you look at it, you've got residential low density, just little tiny properties. I mean, everything is all mixed in anyway. So in a larger place, that might look like a checkerboard. To me, in Crescent City, we're already a checkerboard. So just, because we're small.
And I had these at the last meeting and I thought we made a copy because Karen, remember my cat got hold of, and Lisa, you even commented about that. So I thought y'all got a copy. But we'll definitely make sure you have another copy made of
Okay,
these.
but you're right, your cat has made them very memorable.
Yes.
So, okay, well, that answers my question about that. Thank you. It's important for the vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have is there anything else? Steve, before we leave here, I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with your questions. Huh?
It's a good chair.
That's a good chair.
He's done.
Okay, you're done? Okay. I just want to make sure, Anybody else? Does anybody else have anything else they want to ask? If not, we'll go ahead and I'm ready to close the workshop out. Ida, thank you very much. I think you've made some really good, we've made some headway with this and some better understanding, and we greatly appreciate that. And you driving over here for us to do that, in your preparation.
Mayor, I have one question.
Yes.
About the last 3 slides that talked about the process of.
2021 and 24, we do not have copies of. Is that
Oh,
what you?
really? I can leave them.
Okay,
or-
Sure.
Yeah,
Those were really good.
okay.
So,
I wrote that down on my notes, get copies of those. Okay. Okay, is that it? We're done? We're good? Thank you. Everybody else? Okay, I'm gonna close out the workshop
Thank you.
at
You can just-
6:45. Ida, thank